Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Security IQ. Say hello, Min.
Hi, everybody.
Lisa's here, and we are back with Eric. Eric, say hi to the audience again. Thanks for returning.
Hello.
You're going to have to tell us what's in there, Eric.
This is a hard ale from a local place up here in Rock Mountain. I think it is New York.
Very nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, this episode is going to be an interesting one in that Min and I talked to a number of people, sources, so to speak, on different subjects, like current events in the security world. And Eric, during our last taping, was working on some really interesting stuff. We wanted to make sure that he had a little clearance to talk about what he's going to share, but we're bringing to you a little bit of intel from Eric's world that could be relevant for your own. So Eric, tell us what you're working on.
Okay, so as everybody knows, some of the big current stuff right now is the big SolarWinds hack and FireEye. And so for the last couple of weeks, I deal in day-to-day security operations. And so we have been on many firefighter calls over the last week until all hours trying to deal with this.
Before you move any further, for anyone who isn't familiar, I mean, I think everyone has heard the name SolarWinds at this point, but for anyone who has just been living under a rock, give us a tiny little bit of layman's terms, broad strokes here.
Yeah.
So SolarWinds does a lot of different things. It's very big in the networking world and the infrastructure side of the house. And it provides a lot of infrastructure and network information. I don't know the full depth of it because I don't live in that. I live in security and the muck of the bad guys. But it's kind of equating for a lot of the security folks. It's like the SIM for us. So everything comes into it, get all sorts of information into it. And it's kind of their brains of the operation for networking and infrastructure.
And over the last month or so, it's just been getting
blowing out of
torn up.
Yep.
So, okay. So initially the big reveal was FireEye. FireEye announced that they got hacked. And in the security world, it's a big deal.
Yep.
FireEye is a big name. FireEye provides a lot of managed services. They provide a lot of tools. They're the ones that people call a lot of times when they've been hacked. So for them to come out and say, hey, we got hacked is a big deal. And it's a big reality check for a lot of people who might not, think, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It is. And so following up with that, FireEye had announced that they were in talks in works with the FBI and Microsoft to kind of dig into this a little bit more and who they attributed this to. And then eventually it came out that SolarWinds got hacked. And there's still kind of some back and forth on where the hack originated, which caused the FireEye hack, which did not cause Microsoft to get compromised as well.
A lot of big names were compromised. I don't think it was just Microsoft. There were
no.
quite a bit of big names.
13 different federal agencies sent out a notification that you will immediately stop using it, period.
The Treasury, was it the Department of Treasury?
Treasury was one. There was a lot of big departments that got hit. And so they took immediate action. But on the 13th of December at about 7 p.m. Eastern time, FireEye had a webinar that made this big announcement. We are a FireEye customer. And so we we got a phone call from our rep that basically said, you need to look at this and you need to look at it now,
Wow.
which then spun up calls to SVPs and up, and us taking immediate action to kind of deal with it. And FireEye's initial, remediation was to contain them. Right. And if anybody in the world kind of knows, when you say I need to contain a server, it's basically like you're signing your own death warrant at that point.
I'm sorry, that's why I'm chuckling.
Right. It's bad. You can't go you can't be a security guy and go to a network guy or a server guy and say, like, hey, I need to contain your Citrix box that has 13,000 VMs or VDIs running on it. They're going to look at you and tell you no. And it's a big deal to say our remediation action is for you to immediately contain all SolarWinds instances. And you're talking, anybody could have anywhere from 10, 15, 20 plus instances running SolarWinds.
So how many, let me ask this, how many nodes were you affected with or compromised in sense of, I don't want to use the word contained, but attempting to mitigate?
So we had 17 that we
17.
needed to address.
Okay. That's a lot for 17. I'm going to say this.
It is a lot. and sometimes, and in this case, the initial reaction across the board was just like, get out the hatchet and just cut the cord.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that too.
And that was a lot of people's reaction. But, because SolarWinds didn't have anything to come out and say, hey, this is the issue. Yes, we understand it. Here's the affected versions. And so it took a day or so for them to do that. So we had to move in with our server teams and get executive approval to shut them down, to isolate them. And we didn't contain them because we didn't feel, because by reading some of the information provided by FireEye, we made the choice to just cut their connection to the internet.
Okay. Which
meant any API or integration that you might have with it got cut off.
Okay.
Because we use PagerDuty. PagerDuty is a very popular tool for a lot of companies. And so we just, nope. And it was, in this instance, security circumvented the production need, at least for a couple of days.
Wow.
While we kind of delved into this a little bit more, because the initial information being provided was not as in depth as we would have hoped. So we kind of...
Why do you think that is?
They were still doing discovery.
Okay.
Do you think any of it was on purpose? Meaning, were they withholding any type of information?
The thoughts and the methodology behind why they did it, it's tough. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff. What was it? I even read somewhere that, shareholders started dumping
their stock,
like 2 days. Stock. Yeah. But days before it was announced.
Really? So internally they knew of the issues already.
So and that's it. It's like, but it's like, okay, has it been, collaborated? No. Again, it's all circumstantial. Right. And so it's like, you kind of have to look at it and, with open eyes and kind of read everything. But initially, I think they needed to be prepared as a company, because anytime you go out and say, hey, I've been breached, that's a very tough pill to swallow. Yeah. And to go and announce that to such a large community, they, from a legal perspective, they have to be very prepared to deal with the repercussions and ramifications that are going to come about, because their clientele is so massive, the ripple effect as well, because they announced that they got hacked, which contaminated the supply chain and caused, potential exposures and breaches for all of these companies. And
Well,
so
right. But clientele not only being corporations, but
Government.
federal,
we're talking about national
state,
security
yep.
issues and right.
So Eric, just out of curiosity, based on your, it being a person who's in this day in and day out, operationally, do you feel like methodologically, if they did what they're supposed to do properly? Because, in security, when people say there's a security risk, you fix that vulnerability as soon as possible. But it seems like they were kind of pausing a little bit, trying to assess the situation. And it doesn't sound like they were really fixing it.
Yes and no, and that's always kind of a touchy area because it's reactionary.
Yes.
And so you don't want to just instantly jump to the wrong assumption and make the wrong choice. So sometimes it's more beneficial to kind of get to a certain point and then put a pause on it and go, okay, now let's look at it and be 100% sure. And I want you to look at it before we press forward, because if you're announcing a breach, and not only are you going to have to come out with a fix, your support personnel are now going to have to support all these customers and all of these phone calls, because we were dealing with it, because we were trying to get them on the phone with us, because we wanted to verify that the versions that we had were part of it or were not part of it, because certain hot fixes of it were and some weren't. And so it caused a lot of phone calls and a lot of communication issues with them. We were on hold. We were on a bridge on hold for somebody from SolarWinds for like an hour.
Wow.
And it ended up taking them 2 hours to join us and to find out that, oh, you're not. You the ones you have, we happen to be like just before and just after on some of them. And then we did find one, and it was flagged as part of the malicious ones. But once we got FireEye involved and we did some deep dive investigation into it, it was actually, as we would call it, defanged. It was not malicious in any way. It had the space in there for it, but it was not malicious. And so we, for us was very lucky. But many companies
We're not.
were not.
Yeah.
And so from a business perspective of SolarWinds, yeah, you want to be 100% sure that you've got your ducks in a row, because you're talking lawsuits, you're talking business loss, you're talking everything across the board is going to come, and they're going to feel this for at least 2 to 3 years.
Do you feel they did, I guess, sufficiently support their customers after the breach, or do you feel that was kind of lackluster? Or it was a mixture, depending on who you're dealing with.
Right. I think it was a mixture. I think a lot of it was they just weren't prepared for it.
Yeah.
They were living in the bubble, and they weren't prepared for it, and they got sucker punched.
Bad.
And yeah. And so it was, for me, that was the feeling that I got from them. And FireEye didn't come out and say we got hacked because of them. Microsoft isn't saying that.
Yeah.
Nobody right now is saying we've gotten hacked because of SolarWinds.
Right. Okay.
Now, there may be stuff that comes about down the road because we're still early in it.
Mm-hmm.
But there will probably be, lawsuits and other legal battles that have to go on, that they're going to have to deal with. And unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast when you're a supplier and your source code, or in this case, their patches get owned.
And compromised.
Yeah. So it's tough.
It's it was one of those things I was talking to my husband about, like, how do you secure code? How do you validate code? Because code is a very subjective thing. And person who's programmed in the past, and I hated programming, which is why I've never done programming ever again. Programming. Everybody's signature on the way they code is very unique. It's very specific. And this is the thing that's very challenging, because as you hire programmers, it's up to them to decipher how they want to logically put the code together. How do you think, coming from this, is how do you learn a lesson from this? Like, what do you think is the biggest lesson learned?
I think, like you said, coding is tough.
It's tough. Yeah.
I am not a coder. I will sit here and kind of do this on the keyboard and be like, okay, I can muddle my way through Linux and all of that because I need to. But I am not a programmer by any means, and it's tough. And like you said, everybody has their own unique way of doing things. In a sense, it's a lot like a hacker. Hackers are unique individuals, from a psychological perspective on how they do things and their thought processes and methodology on how they conduct things. And it's the same way with programmers. They become very focused on what they're doing, and they'll sit there and they'll just put headphones on and they're just gonna start going. And it could be hours before they look up, and their first thought isn't security. But the problem that in there lies the problem, because not everybody thinks about security, and but everybody thinks about, oh, well, I got to lock my car, or I got to lock my front door, or set my alarm when I leave the house, or park my car somewhere. But when it comes to, ensuring that what you're building to support customers or whatever is secure, it's like, well, it's not really part of the business plan.
Yeah.
And that in there lies the problem, which is why we end up spending millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars on solutions and personnel, because we're not starting from the ground up on this. We're playing catch up. And so, trying to find the perfect solution to kind of go, okay, let's check your code. Is it secure? You're not going to find it. It's super tough.
Plus there's millions of lines. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. It brings up a good question. I was actually just talking about with somebody else. So people sign NDAs all the time, right? What's the purpose of signing an NDA if the code's not secure, right? If I sign your NDA and my buddy next to me wants to hack into your whatever, what's the point? So on one hand of the law, you got an NDA. It's almost like that old saying, like, laws are for honest people, right? So you have on one side of the law, you have
I love it.
it's the truth, right?
Yep.
What hacker out there is sitting there? I signed that NDA,
Right.
No, but there's nobody out there, right? So you can sign all the contracts you want, but when it comes to hacking, and to your point, they could sit there for hours on end. These are people who are puzzle solvers. This is what they get off on, right? And there is a price on every solution. So if they can turn that passion into some sort of monetary reward, everyone, it's game on for everyone. So, it's security, to your point, is something that really, really needs to be looked at moving forward, particularly in technology, and I'm not the most technical. I'm the first person to admit it, but it's pure common sense. It's just logic. And there are so few people that are actually paying attention to that, both on the physical side and the cyber side.
Let's go back though, and all the tech people that I've met, as smart, as brilliant as they are, they lack that.
Equally as naive very often.
They lack that common sense of.
Yep.
There are a lot of people like that. I've known so many people who are brilliant, but equally as naive.
Yes. And
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sitting there and I'm like twiddling my thumb and I'm talking to a few of these. I'm like, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Not going to disclose names and have stories there.
Right. Well, I don't want to, I do want to talk more about this. We might want to save more of this intel for another segment. But thank you for sharing that little tidbit. And we're going to be bringing on some more sources, so to speak. Maybe we'll have Eric back to share a little bit more intel as we move forward. If you like this topic or like this line of commentary, comment below. We want to hear from you. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.